Alright guys, we have another ligamented model here. First I want you to take note of the interosseous membrane. Then you can see here, we're looking at the palmar surface of a right hand. That is going to be your palmar radio-ulnar ligament. Then we have our palmar ulnocarpal ligaments running from the ulna to the carpals. We have our palmar radiocarpal ligaments. Then we get to our intercarpal ligaments. All of these are intercarpal. Palmar intercarpal. This one though in particular, the capitate's right there, and this is called the radiate ligament, also the radiate capitate ligament. It has a few different names. Essentially, right here at the capitate, you have ligamentous structures that radiate to the other carpals. So technically, it's one of those intercarpal ligaments, but that's the radiate ligament. And then here we have more intercarpal ligaments, palmar intercarpal. Then we go to the palmar carpo metacarpal ligaments, and they are kind of zigzagging throughout, each going from a carpal to a metacarpal. And then also the pisiform here, he has two specific ligaments. This one's an intercarpal, this one's a carpo metacarpal, but the pisiform likes to name them a little more specifically using his name. I like to say since he's the tiniest of the carpals, he might have small man syndrome. That can help you remember it. So he has to put his name on everything. So we have the pisohamate running from the pisiform to the hook of the hamate, and then we have the pisometacarpal. So pisohamate, pisometacarpal. Now you can see the deep transverse ligament running through here. You can see at each knuckle or at the metacarpal phalangeal joints and the distal and proximal interphalangeal joints. You can see all those ligamentous structures as well. Let's look at the dorsal view. Again, we can see the interosseous membrane, the dorsal radio-ulnar, the dorsal radiocarpal. You have the ulnar collateral and the radial collateral, ulnar and radial. Now, we're looking at the dorsal view, but you need to remember that we name things according to anatomical position. So yes, we can only see the radial and ulnar collaterals from the dorsal view, but we need to name them. If we're going to call them the medial collateral or radial or lateral collateral, we need to make sure that we're referencing them from anatomical position. So this, even though we're looking here, that's lateral in reference to my entire body. If I flip my hand over into supination, which would be anatomical position, this is going to be the medial collateral ligament. That's going to be the lateral collateral ligament. Here we have the dorsal intercarpal ligament. We have the dorsal carpo metacarpal ligaments. And then on this model, if you look just on top in between those bases of the metacarpals, those would be the dorsal metacarpal ligament. And then if we flip back to the palmar view, the palmar metacarpal ligaments connecting the bases of the metacarpals. Now on this one as well, you can see very clearly the metacarpal phalangeal joint collateral ligaments. So for every single knuckle you've got, think of them as baby knees, and they each have an MCL and an LCL. We're not going to name them individually. We are just going to call them the metacarpal phalangeal joint collateral ligaments, the proximal interphalangeal joint collateral ligaments, and then the distal interphalangeal joint collateral ligaments. And those are pretty much what I would go over or test on for this model. Now this guy here, this is representing the carpal tunnel. When you're looking at your hand, the bony structures, you can see how this is shaped like a little bowl. It's got a little concave cup shape there. That's the carpal tunnel. It's talking about that little U shape that the carpals form naturally, and you have ligamentous structures that support that. Here you can see that U shape right here as well, the little U, the carpal tunnel. There's a lot that passes through that tunnel. Here it's showing you all the stuff that passes through there. So your flexor digitorum tendons, your nerves, you have blood vessels, you have all kinds of stuff. So when we have inflammation there, you can see how that compression could create some severe pain. It could create numbness, tingling, permanent damage in some cases. Carpal tunnel syndrome is very, very serious, and that's when you have inflammation and restriction of these different structures within there because they're so compressed. After therapy and restriction of movement, a lot of times people will wear a brace that holds their wrist in neutral. If that doesn't alleviate the pain, they might actually cut through this tendon right here to release some of that. That's the surgical option, which is typically a last resort. But that's the carpal tunnel that we were just looking at.